webinar on the yeah, thank you so much, Nitish, for recording the session. So welcoming you all for this wonderful webinar on the topic cybersecurity trends on the cybersecurity domain. And this cybersecurity is actually this application of technology that mainly protect the data and the system from cyber attacks. So are you ready to know about more about it, or are you ready to get an introduction on how this cybersecurity is going to be having a working on our environment? So are you ready to get a small knowledge on that? Can I get a response in the chat? Are you guys ready for that?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Maybe can I get more response in the chat? Let me see how responsive the participants is. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so that maybe we can move on to our main chief guest who has been there for this wonderful session. So we have Mr. Danit Krishnan. He works as a manager at EY, and he's almost having around 6 years of experience in the cybersecurity domain itself. So yeah, somebody have unmuted. Okay, so Danit, I'm welcoming you for this session to take up the session, and you have the time with you. And I would also like to welcome the colleagues from ICT Academy of Kerala who have also joined. I can see that Riji sir have already joined. He is the head of the knowledge office. So hi, Riji sir. Okay, meanwhile, okay, fine. So my name is Aishwarya. I'm been the part of ICT Academy of Kerala and work as the assistant manager in ICT. So Danit, are you ready?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay, on to you then.
All right. So yeah, in fact, I'm kind of happy to see a very large group and apparently more interaction than some of the recent sessions I've had. So yeah, I'm kind of excited. So on this particular session, we are going to primarily talk about the trends and opportunities in cyber, focusing a little bit probably, 30% on the trends and 60% on the opportunities in cyber, because that's what a lot of people who want to get into cyber would be interested in, right? So see, cyber, what I've basically done is, right, I have kind of reflected into what I have seen in my customer engagements, what we have been seeing on the cyberspace, and also, based on the various cyber state annual reports, etc., I've managed to come up with some key themes, which we'll be discussing, right? So, see, one of the most talked, most discussed themes in 2022 is basically the cyber warfare, right? We all know that cyber warfare has been something that has existed for several years. Even maybe the one of the instances I can relate is back in 2011, there's a series of attacks happening between India and Pakistan. Like a lot of Indian websites were getting defaced, and then some of our people were like some of the activists were taking it up and then attacking it back. During that time, it was largely cyber warfare was largely defacing websites, doing denial of service attacks. Then later, there was this a whole time period where it was one of the most I would say it was a time where anonymous and similar hacker groups were having maximum screen time, and they were discussed around the world. And primarily at that point also, the techniques were largely like denial of service, trying to break down websites. But cyber warfare has evolved a lot from that perspective. And over these years, what we are seeing is definitely from now on, every modern conflict, be it military conflict, be it any sort of conflict between two ideological group, there is a good chance that a part of it or a lot of focus for the attack is happening also on the cyberspace. So modern day conflicts are not just restricted to battlefields, but in fact, cyberspace is another battlefield where various players or threat actors are basically fighting out for dominance. It is happening even as we speak, right? It's real time. Once you realize that, right, it's very interesting. Even as we talk, there are a lot of cyber attacks happening across the world, and as per the analysis by FireEye, so far there are close to almost 2000 different advanced persistent threat groups. So I'll talk a little bit about the various threat actors, right? But the most sophisticated actors are called the, basically the APT groups, or we call them as the advanced persistent threats. Primarily because, these groups, right? These, again, sometimes it can be a group of individuals. Sometimes it can be a group of nation state sponsored attackers, because nowadays, every basically country has a cyber army, or basically a military division that focuses on cyber. And sometimes these APT groups can be directly linked to those militaries also. But primarily, these nation state attackers basically a cut above the rest because they use very sophisticated techniques. Many times they use 0 days, or will have their own exploit toolkits. So basically, a lot of the techniques they are using is very hard to detect. Most, we've seen in recent examples, right? A lot of the techniques they use are unknown to the information security community. And many times we are able to detect them through proactive controls or when there is a breach. So definitely the number of, if you look at the number of the nation state attackers or APT groups, it is rising in general, and every year, there is a significant growth, and the growth is not linear also. Basically that graph is growing at a very steep angle. So, and then more and more nation states are trying to get their dominance at this space. Primarily, if you look at the various threat actors, right, generally we classify the different kinds of threat actors as nation states, cyber criminals, activists, sometimes terrorism-backed activity. Then there can be, script kiddies or people who do it just for fun. And, finally, there is also insider threat. We'll talk about insider threat in detail. That's another, very significant threat for modern organizations. But in general, these groups are kind of different. I mean, primarily it's a way to classify, but that boundaries are not actually drawn clearly. Sometimes things are a little fuzzy. So typically these APT groups largely fall into nation state attackers, but sometimes those can also be cyber criminals. Their intent is purely profit. So how it matters is, right, for example, if it's a nation state APT group, often their attack will be motivated by the geopolitical situation or their international relationship. For example, certain APT groups, if is believed to be originating from China, Russia, you will know that certain targets probably they will not target based on the relationships, right? Certain targets or certain organizations in a particular geography are more likely to be affected by these actors. Then activists are typically people who are ideological and typically have a particular belief system, and then target everybody who is kind of against that system. And there is a lot of connect between the cyber criminals and the terrorist groups. In fact, it is again, it's kind of speculated that a lot of these cyber criminal APT groups ultimately they have their physical chains into the terrorist and real world money laundering networks also. So on this particular area, right, there is an interesting trend that we are seeing. So basically, this trend is particularly evident during the recent conflict between Russia and Ukraine. What we are seeing is, right, along with a military conflict or even before a, real world conflict, there's this massive attack, massive global attack. You'll see that. Okay, I hope that was not a question or anything. Okay, so probably if you can check and unmute, kind of like mute yourself if you're unmuted. Okay. See, the actual conflict is happening between Russia and Ukraine, but actually the impact of that conflict, you can see the real impact on the cyberspace, and actually the impact on the cyberspace is quite global. In fact, again, all of these are, if you ask me, has any of these been proven? Like if a particular APT group is tied to Russia, what is the proof? Basically, it's an interesting topic in itself, right? Typically, it is very difficult for law enforcement agencies to get substantial amount of proof that, okay, this particular APT group belongs to a particular nation state, because often, that is a way in which they work. And all we do is when we do malware analysis, we get some hints, like for example, using the naming convention, the techniques that were previously used. Based on some historical analysis, we would be able to classify. And again, that is likely, that's more based on a probability. But regardless, we saw a lot of attack happening against basically the Ukraine, and also with the NATO allies, whoever is supporting Ukraine, right? There is a global attack campaign happening against all of these involved parties, and vice versa. From Ukraine to Russia also, there are a lot of attacks happening. But what we are seeing is, from a typical denial of service perspective, which was the trend probably 5 years ago, now the focus is more about using ransomwares. Like, there are multiple attacks where ransomwares were used in order to, like, basically what happens is when you use a ransomware, it kind of locks up the entire files. Every file is encrypted, and unless the attacker gives you the decryption key, typically there is no way to decrypt the data, because they are using basically enterprise grade, the most secure form of cryptography to do the encryption. So basically, whatever arms and ammunition we have as a security consultant, it is the same. When that same arms and ammunition is used for abuse, basically, there are certain aspects where we cannot help, right? Once a breach happens, if all the files are encrypted with something like maybe AES 256, decrypting that information back or brute forcing that information back is very difficult. So the only feasible way for us is to get the keys back. So this trend is likely to continue, right? So because compared to a physical war, it is far more cheaper to do an cyber war on a global scale, and there are no boundaries also. From any geopolitical location, you can target any other location, because we are all connected globally. So we will see a lot more focus onto the cyberspace in the coming years. Like, a lot of because basically the entry barrier is quite less. Even if a group of motivated people, like 4 or 5 people, can create a kind of a group and then start targeting, and also law enforcement, often pinpointing people is very difficult, because in the event of an attack, all we get is from which IPs this traffic probably originated. And there are several ways in terms of hiding your IP, several evasion techniques. So from that IP pointing to specific individuals is a challenge that law enforcement is facing across the globe. But recently, I think in 2020 or 2021, for one of the Chinese APT groups, the US law enforcement was able to identify a decoy company which was running the APT group, and they were able to with proof, they were able to identify the real world individuals who were behind that particular APT group. But in general, I told you there are close to 2000 APT groups. It is very difficult to pinpoint that, okay, who are the individuals who are working behind that particular groups, because basically in cyberspace, we all use, we have an option to not use our real identities, right? Even in social media, we can just create an account and pretend to be someone. So this was one case, right? The APT 41. This was indeed one of the first major groups where law enforcement was able to identify the people who were behind this. And so from a law enforcement perspective, this investigation on APT 41, or also known as a barium, that group was a significant achievement, because typically it is not possible to identify, pinpoint the individuals who are working under or behind an APT group. And in this case, what happened was basically, I think APT 41 is a group that is connected to China, and they were running a decoy company, technology company out of, I guess, Singapore. And it was under the banner of that company. They were running a APT group which were targeting specific countries and specific industries, primarily healthcare clients in US. Now, along with the APT groups, right, we are seeing an interesting model coming up in organized cybercrime. Previously, even 5 years ago, we had dark web, but they were largely forums where you can go and get all illegal stuff like malwares, exploits, all nefarious stuff like drugs, weapons, whatever. But now what we are seeing is that in the enterprise world, there's a lot of focus around SaaS. So nowadays, every service or every product is trying to be cloud enabled and trying to work in a SaaS model or as a service model. In fact, it has gone a cliche. Everybody just adds as a service to the end of every idea, and so there are a lot of these as a service platforms focusing more around the service and not about the maintenance. Everything is taken care, right? So interestingly, the same trend is coming into organized cybercrime world also. So previously, if you wanted to, do maybe a ransomware attack or do a global scale phishing attack, you needed to have some level of technical capability. You should have a crew of people who basically have understanding of different techniques that can be used. But with the emergence of these ransomware as a service or malware as a service platforms, right? There are a lot of these shady dark web and Telegram groups, not just dark web. Nowadays, a lot of these groups are also operating in Telegram. Now, from there, if you pay the money, basically you have to pay the money using cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ethereum, any such cryptocurrency. Then they will let you use the ransomware as a service platform. So there will be an initial, again, there will be sometimes an initial amount of something like a joining fee there. But once you join, you get access to all the tools and you do kind of like a revenue sharing. For every credit card information you're stealing, or every sellable kind of information asset that you are getting through this attacks, you are supposed to do some revenue share with the platform. So what this is making is that it is making things very easy for even unsophisticated players to enter the organized cybercrime field and then do massive global attacks. And there are also exchanges, right? Just like real world exchanges, we are seeing a lot of malware, or dark web exchanges where people trade malwares, people trade credit card information. So the consequences of that is, if somebody is doing an attack, let's say from European countries or US, typically, if you steal the credit card information, it is very difficult to encash those details, or it is not easy to pull the money from some of these mature economies. So what is happening in the real world is these stolen credentials, stolen credit card information, all of this is traded on the exchanges. And in the parts of the world where uh, there is more influence for the crime network, probably if I need to give an example, for example, Mexico is one such location where traditionally there is a lot of ATM frauds happening, and the governance and law enforcement is quite weak there. So what happens is there is an real world crime network chain that is connected to these platforms and will help in these various cyber attackers to indeed convert these monies, pull out these monies through basically in other parts of the world, and then through a crime network of money laundering, this money gets this kind of money gets washed and converted to a white money. So it's again, there's a lot of studies and papers suggesting that some of these platforms are connected to the drug cartels, terrorist groups. So overall, we are seeing a lot of focus into ransomware, malware as a service platforms in organized cybercrime area. So overall, the point is all of this, right? All of these trends are not good for us from a cybersecurity professional standpoint, because all of these recent advancements are making our life more difficult, because basically the adversaries are becoming more and more sophisticated. So we have to always stay one step ahead of the game, right? And basically it's a cat and mouse game. It always has been, but now that frequency of changes, the evolution is kind of picking up pace, I should say. How many of you are aware of the SolarWinds attack that happened almost a few months to a year ago? Did anybody read about it? It was also even featured in some of our local newspapers also. Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing a response. So I'll see from an enterprise perspective, right? Basically, the SolarWinds attack was very significant because it was one of the major examples of a supply chain attack.
Hello.
Hello. Does somebody have a question? I hope I am audible, right? You guys are following me, right?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, I guess somebody just unmuted
Hey,
themselves.
Nitish, can you mute all the participants?
Yes.
Okay, yes, we'll continue. So see, one of the key SolarWinds attacks was very significant because it was one of the first major instances of supply chain attacks. Like most industries, if you look at any industry these days, right? None of the mature industries, people make everything from the scratch. You look at any of your mobile phones, right? The components are coming from different companies. Like take laptops, the individual components. If you take a laptop that is manufactured by Dell, the chipset or basically the motherboard and the chip would be coming from Intel. Then you would have maybe the hard disk coming from Seagate, different providers. So the point is, in the industrial era, a lot of these components are coming from other suppliers or vendors, and there is a supply chain that is fueling product development. And in software industry also, in the recent years, it's no different. Nobody is building software from the scratch. No significant or no important software is built from scratch, and we often use standard libraries. I mean, even if some of you have development experience, always we tend to use standard libraries, sometimes open source libraries. And these different software development components will be coming from different vendors. And the main problem in digital world is a lot of these libraries are open source. So open source library means if I find an area where let's say for the visualization, we have a library called OpenCV that is used in a lot of various scientific purposes. Now, OpenCV is for a particular purpose, but it is actually started by a group of people. Now, a lot of these major libraries, I should say, are well maintained because there are individuals who are spending time on it. But again, we have all we have to understand is that the whole point of open source libraries to stay as a non-profit, and typically the resources available with the maintainers are quite limited, unlike major companies like Microsoft or the providers like Oracle. All of them have a maintenance support for their products, and there's a team working on it. But for open source libraries, particularly for some of the libraries, what we are seeing is people will start an open source project, but after some point it is not maintained, right? So the point is, so even in the software world, there's a supply chain, and now attackers are focusing more on attacking the supply chain itself instead of the product. Because if you think about it, right, if you see that there is a popular library that is used by, that has 10,000s of maybe interactions, folks in GitHub, but probably not well maintained. And there is a good chance that such libraries will be used by some of the major vendors and major products. Right? And if you push a malicious update or a malicious change into one of those libraries, then what will happen is, through that malicious update through the library, you would be able to do some damage or attack the end customers of that particular product. And that's exactly what that happened in the case of a slightly different version of what that happened in the case of SolarWinds. Basically, a malicious update was pushed, and then through that, several firms were compromised, including Mandy and I guess, the FireEye, right? And also some of the key government installations in US. So supply chain attack is a big problem, because particularly in the software development field, a lot of these underlying libraries are open source. So who takes the accountability for open source? That's a key question. Now, another thing is, in fact, what IDC is saying, that close to 70% of all the organizations are in one form or the other cloud enabled. Now, everybody is connected to the cloud. Sometime, previously, so the assumption is all of your IT resources are, hosted within your trusted data center. And by putting in some controls around the data center, you're kind of more or less safe. But nowadays, your infrastructure itself is global. See, and the power of cloud is, I can create from sitting in India, I can create an infrastructure anywhere in the world. And if that cloud adoption is not governed right, what will quickly happen is, in organizations, they will have a massive global infrastructure, which is very difficult to maintain and monitor from a security perspective, unless planned and done in a secure way. So even the accelerating pace of the cloud adoption is a major challenge for us in the industry. And because of all these reasons, right, there is a push towards inherently secure software. That is one, maybe you might have heard about the term called DevSecOps. So previously, the concept was, you would develop a software, and then you basically do a penetration testing, or basically a security testing at the end of building a software. Now, if you basically look at a real world analogy that is as similar as building a car, and then you do a crash test at the end of it. If you build a car without thinking about the structural integrity, without thinking about the design, and you just do a crash test, most likely you are going to find engineering problems, right? And that's exactly what was the issue. Organizations were spending a lot of money in terms of addressing the vulnerabilities associated with software. So there is an inherent push towards an inherently secure software. So what's an inherently secure software? So basically, if you remember, if some of you are from software engineering background, we have something called as a software development lifecycle, right? Now, the software development lifecycle is primarily focused about how do we make software that meets quality. right? By adding secure practices to every stage of that SDLC, we would be able to achieve basically what we call as an inherently secure software. So for example, even from requirement analysis, the design part of building a software, the security requirements are thought, basically considered. So the point is, I can give you a very simple example. Think about you're building maybe a software like WhatsApp, a messenger, right? So during the architecture phase itself, if you are identifying that, okay, there are missing encryption controls, it is very easy for you because at that point, it is just a change in the diagram. Right? Because you have not implemented anything. But after you have developed and delivered the product, if you understand that, okay, your product is missing encryption, if you have to go and enable encryption on that product, there's a lot of re-engineering that will happen. And typically, the later you identify vulnerabilities and misconfigurations, the more you have to pay. So that is why there is a lot of push around DevSecOps, and DevSecOps is a very hot area these days. In fact, the whole developer community is kind of pushing towards DevSecOps. How do we make the whole the process of building softwares more secure? Finally, we'll just quickly go through some of the other trends also. So inside a threat, as I mentioned earlier, it's a big problem for organizations these days because traditionally security was thought in what we call as a castle and moat approach. So if you know a little bit about, or you might have watched some of the movies. So in medieval warfare tactics, right? There was a very effective tactic. You build a castle somewhere uphill, you build a castle, and around the castle, you dig a moat, right? Which is very deep. And connecting the castle and the rest of the ground, there is just one typical entryway, which can be retracted and closed in the event of an attack. And it was a very effective strategy. If you follow some of the analysis on history, it was a very effective strategy until basically gunpowder was invented. Gunpowder was used in a mass scale, right? So even our security methodologies, our security controls were structured in a classical castle and moat approach, primarily because we were focusing around our network perimeter. So if we had a network, our assumption was we put some controls around our network, then we are safe. Put some firewalls, put some maybe some monitoring controls, some IDS, IPS, then you are safe. That was the assumption. Now with COVID and basically with COVID, what happened is two things. One, there is a massive focus on remote working. Everybody is working from remote offices. So previously, if your office and infrastructure was just one building, one data center or multiple data centers, now it's a dispersed network. Every remote office, every person working from their home, that home office itself is an extension of your real world enterprise office. And coupled to that, there is massive cloud adoption also. So equally, your infrastructure is becoming dispersed and global. So in that situation, the classical perimeter security approach is not helping organizations because you don't have a perimeter at all. Previously, everybody was working from a premises. There is a data center, but with cloud and remote working, now you have a global infrastructure to worry about, right? So one key themes that we are seeing is, from traditional view of looking at assets, monitoring the traffic, monitoring the assets, monitoring the computers, there is a lot of focus around looking at user behavior. What are users doing? So we have user and entity behavior analysis solutions coming in the market, which focuses primarily on what you are doing, as what the users are doing, because insider threat is a big problem for companies. And one example is, and again, it can be intentional, non-intentional. Like sometimes, it is intentional. Employee wants to make some financial benefit, or they have some grudge against the company, and they are purposely doing it. But many a times it is due to ignorance, it is due to mistakes from the employees also. So you might have, if you were quite active in Twitter, you would have noticed, I think it was again almost a year back. What happened was one fine day, from a lot of popular people like Bill Gates, Barack Obama, lot of influential people from their accounts. A message was sent out. Basically, tweet went out saying that deposit the Bitcoin onto one address, they'll basically get double. Any sensible person after reading this will sense a little bit of fishiness on this particular message, but a lot of people fell for it. And what happened under the hood is, right, it's not, Twitter account compromises are not new. Even recently, I guess some of our key accounts used by Indian government were compromised. It's a normal thing. But when suddenly a lot of accounts, I think close to 100 prominent accounts were affected during that breach. And later it was identified that, it was actually a mistake by an internal employee. So apparently there is an internal portal where you can craft tweets, right? Instead of that interface where you create tweets, there is an internal portal where you can send tweets on behalf of anybody. That feature itself is a total mistake in my view. But apparently that the URL and access to that internal portal was leaked out to attackers who basically took advantage of it. And now, there's a lot of emerging tech, right? Nowadays, we're talking about the 5G, blockchain, decentralized finance, the whole, buzz around cryptocurrency, AI, ML, IoT. All of these have their own attack surface. And, often what happens is a lot of these technology, right? When this technology is developed, people are not worried too much about the security. But once it comes into implementation, that is where the security part is thought. So security is still an afterthought in most of this emerging tech. But one area where we are seeing significant attacks is blockchain and IoT. If you look at the blockchain or crypto attacks, right, it's on rise. And similarly, IoT, one of the most significant botnets is called the Mirai botnet. It was the first botnet that demonstrated that IoT devices can be targeted and can be used for doing some denial of service attack, basically to create a botnet. So, all of this, right? All of this is in a way good and in a way bad for us, because, for us, the people in the industry, this means the need to stay ahead of the learning curve, constantly look at these technologies, look at how we can secure these emerging tech, how we can protect our clients from all of these different attack vectors. But for people who want to enter into cyber, right, it's equally an opportunity, because what all of these trends means is that, cyber is not going away anytime soon. So in fact, cyber is almost becoming an utility at this point, because, previously cyber was basically cybersecurity was treated as a good to have feature. So most of the companies, if they are wealthy enough, they can afford cyber. That was the concept. But now with the changes in laws and regulations, for a lot of sectors, cyber is a mandatory thing. Even if you are not making a single money of profit from selling a product whatsoever, it is almost a basic utility. You have to still pay for it. So let's say if you run a shop, even if you are not making any profit, you still have to pay rent, you still have to pay for electricity. So just like that, for organizations also, cyber is becoming an utility, a basic mandatory utility. Because of that, there is a lot of demands in cyber, and currently there is a demand and supply problem, right? So what that means is that there are a lot of opportunities, but there are not enough people in the market. So even in a compensation wise, in fact, a lot of these organizations which hire are paying quite nice when compared to other sectors. I see that a couple of people have raised their hands. If you have any questions, we can quickly take one or two questions and then move to the opportunities. Okay. I saw that there's one question called on basically DeFi, right? Okay, DeFi is basically one of the concepts associated with blockchain. So with blockchain, what is happening is we are decentralizing the network. So typically, if you look at our conventional network, usually there is a server and then a lot of computers connected to a server. So in a blockchain network, what is happening is one, there is a lot of focus around decentralization, and what is happening is basically it often in most use cases it is a decentralized ledger, right? So assume a classical finance management software. So what happens is such an ERP solution would be hosted on a server, and then different branch offices will be connecting to the server and then inputting data. So there is this one central source of truth from where all data can be uh, basically taken. The problem is, right, that doesn't work well in a lot of cases. That is where people are going with this blockchain, which is basically nothing but a decentralized ledger. So it always almost means that, all of you have a copy of basically the ledger, and nobody is individually able to do a malpractice because everybody has a copy. If somebody does a malpractice, you can verify that ledger with your copy, and if it doesn't match, it's a clear mismatch, right? So now using that, a lot of FS use cases or financial use cases are getting converted into decentralized finance, right? So there are all of those are use cases associated with blockchain, and there's also a lot of buzz around NFT. So some of these NFTs are also fueling DeFi. So if you are interested, probably you can search around DeFis, and the Ethereum website has a lot of discussion around DeFis. So that's a quite interesting area, and there's a lot of focus, cybersecurity focus also. Okay, I'll take some of these questions afterwards. I'll just quickly move to the opportunities. So in terms of the opportunities, right, primarily to understand who are hiring in the market, basically it's consulting firms are like basically all these consulting firms like the Big Four accounting, like EY, PwC, KPMG, or even the consulting Big Four like, the Accenture and the likes, right? They are focusing a lot on cyber and they are hiring. And then there are a lot of cyber focused boutiques also, basically companies that are offering only cybersecurity services. Then there are a lot of cyber products, right? You see a lot of vendors like Checkmarx, Qualys, Tenable. All of these companies are building cyber products, and they also need cyber professionals basically. And even our conventional IT services providers like basically TCS, Infosys, Wipro, IBM, all of them have opportunities in cyber and are hiring big time. Now, apart from all of these service providers who are offering services to customers, end customers, a lot of digital enabled organizations, IT organizations, IT product development organizations, banks, insurance, a lot of organizations are also equally hiring a lot of people. And finally, there are a lot of opportunities with government roles also. And in India, I think one of the most sought after opportunities with the computer emergency response team. I think there's an exam where it's done. I don't fully recall the details, but they hire basically people. If you pass an exam, they take people in scientist as a computer security scientist. That is the designation in which you get hired. But the point is typically the kind of opportunities in client facing consulting role and internal roles would be slightly different, because typically if you're working for a bank or insurance, you would be having a very specific focus. How do I address the problems, or how I can secure a bank. Whereas with some of these, customer facing operations, you get a far more wider view, right? So overall, some of the areas in which people are needed, I have tried to make it more like a word kind of cloud. So basically, we have a lot of opportunities around penetration testing, identity access management, security operations, monitoring, DevSecOps, cyber forensics, basically complaints to regulations. A lot of these organizations would want to get certified. Basically, if you buy a product from the market, you would look for certain standards, whether it is ISI certified. Does it have some star rating? Likewise, even for companies, they need to get some certifications done if they want to showcase themselves as secure. So in case of security, we have a ISO certification, that is ISO 27001. That is one of the most sought after certifications. And so even a lot of requirements are there to help companies to help and get them around the compliance aspect, right? And data privacy is one of the upcoming, or one of the emerging areas, or the recent areas where there's a lot of focus. And this was primarily fueled by the introduction of GDPR in EU, and that is where it took some pace, and now it's a hot area also. Moving on, right? So one important question is, there are all of these different opportunities. How do I basically get started? And again, I'm giving a disclaimer. This is heavily, all of these tips I'm saying, all of these different tips I'm saying is heavily biased from my perspective, and it doesn't address a lot of different areas like IAM, the cyber strategy, risk and compliance, because I am primarily a penetration tester. I am focusing more on the attack and defense side, or the technical side of cybersecurity. And in the coming slides, what I'll do is basically give you a little bit around the tricks, what you want to do if you want to get the technical side of cybersecurity, basically the implementation, the operation side of cybersecurity. But the other aspects also we can discuss in case we have some time or through the questions, right? So meanwhile, if you have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat. If you want to basically land into the job of a penetration tester, or a DevSecOps personnel, or a security monitoring person, some of those, security operations role, I basically try to create a small roadmap. But again, it's just a high level plan. It is what worked for me, or what generally works for one person need not necessarily work with same efficiency for somebody else, because your skills and your starting, where you started and all your background, all that matters. But generally, based on the current situation, if you want to be employed in a corporate, if you want to be employed in a lot of these different opportunities I talked about, typically you would want to get your graduation done. I mean, you should have a bachelor's degree. If you ask me, does everybody in the cyberspace have a bachelor degree? Answer is no. There are a lot of firms which are hiring people without even without the degree, or sometimes with backlogs. But generally, to get to the some of the bigger organizations, this is a big hurdle. Sometimes we see people who have the right set of skills, but at least in India, the situation has not changed much, and still bachelor's degree is a bare minimum requirement to get into some of these opportunities. But see, that I would call it as the basically as the basic requirement to get into some of these opportunities. But even if you don't have some backlogs, etc., you can still try, because there are also organizations which accommodate people with backlog also. But again, it will make your journey much harder. But typically, historically, it was very difficult to get into cyberspace, and what people used to do was they used to get into one domain like development or system administration, and later move into cyber after getting some experience. But nowadays, with the increasing number of demand, it is also possible for you to start straight away in cyber. And from one of the typical questions I get from people is, where do I start learning? Is there a course that I can sign up for and I can learn? Or there is a lot of things, I see a lot of things when I go and search, where do I start? So the point is, yes, nowadays there are a lot of information available. There are a lot of websites, Twitter, LinkedIn, and everywhere, depending on the kind of people you follow, right? There is a lot of information you are getting. But the point is, there is no definite A to Z way. If you ask me how to become a doctor or how to become a chartered accountant, the path is well defined, because those professions have existed for even more than hundreds of years, and there's a well-defined career path from getting from one level to next level. Again, there also you have a lot of specializations, but the point here is the whole cyber industry is quite young in that fashion, and also it's very dynamic. Unlike some of the conventional domains, here things are changing on a monthly basis. So if you ask for a path from A to B here, it is very difficult. And what often people will, if you ask people, what they'll be giving you is perspectives, like, how it worked for them. And again, based on your aspirations and where you want to get to, that need not necessarily work for you. So what you should understand is that generally in cyber, you will never stop learning. You will never learn everything. So it doesn't matter. I mean, you don't need to actually learn all aspects of cyber, or you don't need to get all basics. What you need to do is simply pick an area that you are interested in, like penetration testing, or let's say strategy compliance, whatsoever. And then you focus on that area and you try to develop some skills around that area, right? And it doesn't matter where you start. All that matters is consistency and persistence, because I see a lot of people like, who get interested, learning, start learning a lot in a week, and then they don't learn for another 2-3 weeks, and then they come back. That is probably not a productive approach. You would ideally want to, do it in a phased manner, but you should be persistent. That is very important. If you're persistent, then just start anywhere. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of opportunities out there. Start anywhere, and you can just continue learning, and you basically build up your skills on top of it. And some of the another question I get is, should I learn coding if I want to be, or should I be good in coding if I want to get into cyber? The answer is absolutely no. In fact, only if I think about it, only maybe in 30 to 40% of requirements in cyber, we use some amount of programming. Again, some amount of programming, mostly scripting, but less than 10% of opportunities require a developer level of understanding. So again, it helps. Don't misread me. It helps. It helps to have developer understanding. If you have developer understanding, it is again another weapon in your arsenal. But it is absolutely not a prerequisite, right? But one thing we should try to do is, if you want to get the technical side of cyber more than programming, understanding about Linux is very helpful, because a lot of these security tools are Linux based, and a lot of these here targets are also Linux based. A lot of enterprise servers are Linux based or Windows Server based. So learning Linux will really help from that perspective, right? And what that has worked for me is basically by creating my own personal feed of channels from which I can get information. So one way to do is that we can do that by bookmarking some of the interesting websites. We can go to Twitter, follow all the people, different people in information security domain. Same in LinkedIn, right? We can follow people working in the same domain, and through their activity, get a lot of updates, right? In fact, I get a lot of updates from Twitter and LinkedIn, right? By just browsing through my activity, that homepage, I get a lot of information. So creating that feed helps. Then you don't have to actually go and keep checking for this information, or all the time. Instead, it will come to your Twitter feed, or let's say LinkedIn feed. Or you can also join selected forums and Telegram channels, but always know where you're joining. And again, some of these cyber criminals are also using certain channels for nefarious activities. So be mindful of where you're joining, but there are a lot of interesting groups also. And there are good cyber news websites also, like, for example, Corruption Security, Bleeping Computer, Hacker News, a lot of different cyber news websites are also available, which are very helpful. And there are also specific YouTube channels which focuses on security aspect, right? So through all of this, you can learn. There are a lot of, in fact, there's an information explosion. There are a lot of avenues through which you can learn. So another interesting area is books. Typically, the problem with books is, after some times, because cyber is a dynamic domain, books get outdated. In 2 years or 3 years, the technique stock in books gets outdated. But there are some really good books. If you like reading books, then the Web Application Hackers Handbook is one of my favorite books. Right? It's written by the author of Burp Suite, one of the kind of the industry standard tools for web application penetration testing. Finally, learning is and theoretical knowledge is not enough. Have some practice, right? And by practice, don't just go and try it on real world targets, but there are a lot of other targets you can practice on, like capture the flag contest, hack the box, one hub, or Portsiger Academy. These are some of the areas, are basically the options for you to keep practicing your skills. You can also try practicing in bug bounty programs, right? There are a lot of programs where companies open their infrastructure for public to test, and you also get money if you manage to identify some vulnerabilities. Again, some programs are paying, some programs are not paying, but typically bug bounty there are a lot of platforms like HackerOne, Bugcrowd, Synack. Some of them are closed, some of them are public, because some of the programs are only invite only, but some of the programs are public. You can just go and start practicing your skills out there. Finally, you also have an option to do it in the form of internships and sometimes through trainings. I'm not a big fan of trainings because trainings do help if you're looking for specific stuff, right? For example, if I don't have skills in, let's say, a particular domain like 5G security, and then maybe a boutique firm is conducting a very specialized training on 5G security, it helps. It's kind of like a shortcut, right? I can quickly learn from that people. I can get to a base level, right? But still, I have to do a lot of learning myself. Point is, no training will completely equip you. There is no training in the world that will completely equip you to do a particular domain in cyber. So typically, you might take us, in most cases, you can also do without training. So if you want a shortcut, you have money, you can go for training, but otherwise, no training will equip you as such. But internship is a different story. In a lot of startups, a lot of organizations are offering internship, sometimes with a stipend as well. But in general, one point I want you to keep in mind is that never sign up for an internship that is asking for you to pay the money, because most often those organizations or those kind of like firms would be trying to cash in. I mean, there are a lot of such small firms doing that malpractice. So in general, you don't have to pay for an internship, because there are a lot of internships which doesn't ask you to pay. But the idea of an internship is you get to work with some of these companies and you get to learn on the job. But a more effective way is, none of these opportunities existed, and even before that, people used to practice hacking from a home setup. So you can use maybe VirtualBox, some of these virtualization platform, or Docker containerization technology. All of that you can use to basically spin up your own lab and then start practicing from home. Networking is a very important aspect in this community throughout your throughout the period you are planning to stay in this industry, right? Because knowledge sharing, conveying ideas, that is what that helps us defend, against the attacks. Because attackers are collaborating, attackers are evolving. So if we don't collaborate and if we don't basically share the knowledge, our only chance of getting one step ahead of the attackers is by through collaboration and through knowledge sharing. So cybersecurity conferences are a good avenue for that. And in fact, in Kerala, we have Cocoon that is happening periodically. And then we also have Nalcon. That's another significant conference happening in India. Especially if you don't have money, I won't urge you to go and attend the conference as such, because typically attending a conference, you get student passes. If for students, they give out student passes, but in general, it takes some money. So that aspect also you have to evaluate. But in general, all of these conferences, trainings, videos, etc., are available on the internet, typically on the YouTube or on the conference website, and you can listen to all of these conferences. And eventually, what we should all look at is, to talk in such a conference and basically share our ideas and exchange ideas. And you can also be part of various InfoSec communities like OWASP. I'm a member of OWASP. And communities like OWASP is a good forum where you can connect with people who are already in the industry and can also participate in interesting initiatives which can improve the security of the domain in a whole. And it also helps to find a mentor. Some people manage to find a mentor or a person who already has experience. Then the advantage is that person will be able to guide you. Again, typically I take, at least in the information security community, you should always take advices with a grain of salt, because again, what everybody is talking about is perspectives, right? So sometimes things will apply, sometimes things will not apply. And podcasts, there are also some interesting podcasts, right? If you are into the habit of listening to podcast, hosting podcast, listening to podcast is again a good way to get connected with industry. And you should definitely create a handle for yourself in Twitter, create a LinkedIn account, and even create a GitHub account, right? And then start collaborating in all of these platforms, like interact with people, respond to questions, and even Stack Exchange, right? Some of these, forum, like, basically question answer platforms like Stack Exchange, you can participate in them. And you can basically, by that, you're basically building a brand for yourself, and you're also helping out the larger community. Once again, I touched upon some of the contribution aspects, but it is very critical for you to contribute back to the community, because see, again, the whole purpose of this session itself is one such initiative. Basically, I am trying to contribute, help you guys, get to make your journey to the cyberspace faster. Likewise, there are several ways in which we can share our knowledge by writing blogs. If we have an interesting idea, creating a tool, or adding tool features to tools, or even giving feedback on tools. You see a lot of tools on GitHub. If you face an issue with the tool, you have an option to basically keep it to yourself and just use a different tool. But it is much more helpful if you can go to the GitHub project and raise an issue there, so that the developer himself can fix it. Also, you can develop exploits if you find vulnerabilities. There are several platforms where you can publish the vulnerable code, such as ExploitDB. We have something called as Google Hacking Database. Or you can also think about starting your own YouTube channel, or writing a book. Maybe it's maybe a little old-fashioned, but even writing a book is very viable. In fact, there are a lot of good books in the cyberspace, right? Finally, for a local option for contribution, Cyberdome is doing a fantastic job. I mean, they have a lot of volunteers working on interesting projects, helping out the community, doing a lot of impactful things, right? So being part of local opportunities like Cyberdome can also be an added advantage. Finally, certifications is more like a badge. It will add some weight to your profile. Again, it's kind of a topic where I have a little different opinion. Basically what certificates, there are two kinds of certificates broadly. There are certain certifications which would do a theoretical exam, and there are certifications which do a practical exam. So often the certifications which offer practical exams are more weighted than the theoretical ones. Reason being, the theoretical ones, people can still pass the exams without having the conceptual understanding. For example, that used to be the problem with EC Council certifications like CEH. People, they used to do is they used to cheat. They used to get all the answers for previous exam questions, and they'll study those questions and go and write in the exam. And there was a good that approach will help you pass also. But the problem is, right, such people won't have conceptual understanding. So the point is basically, yes, certifications are helpful, especially if you are a beginner. If you have a certification, you are basically distinguishing yourself from the rest of the folks in the market. But what matters is not the certification, but the underlying skills that you're gaining through the certification. Basically, the purpose of every certification that is listed here, or every certification that is released, the purpose is for the attendees to gain some set of skills. So if through the process of attaining certifications, you're not getting those skills, it is going to be a burden for you. A reason being, if I am talking to a person, a fresher who has offensive security, or a person who has moved in from a different domain to cyber and has an offensive security certification, it's a plus and minus for that person actually. I mean, not plus and minus, it's a pro and con. Because from a pro perspective, that CV will get selected, but in my interview round, my expectations would be naturally higher. I would ask practical questions to that person, because that person should have gained that knowledge ideally through the certification. But generally, these are some of the certifications that is quite trending in the market. And you can also go for certain product specific certifications, like, getting certified in Qualys, tools like Web Inspect, or you can also do ISMS, ISO 27000 lead auditor as another certifications if you want to focus on the strategy side, right? Generally, what I would say is that if you are interested to move to cyber, what you have to do is try to distinguish yourself from the rest of the folks, and have a genuine passion and interest, right? One of the typical questions I ask people when they say that they have interest in cyber is, what have you done in order to learn? And many a times people don't have a concrete answer, because personally, when I was interested, I used to do some home experiments, like, setting up virtual box, playing around with VMs. Even that is, that will distinguish you, right? And one mistake you would want to avoid is that, sending an irrelevant CV for a cyber job. What I see is that people prepare the same CV and then use it for a cyber job. Typically, when you want to apply for a cyber job, make sure that your CV is at least customized to it and you put the relevant information. Additional information probably can be put towards the end of your resume and all, but at least the first page should talk about cyber. That is where, if you don't have pre-experience in cyber, you would have a question, what will I put in my resume? That's where, some of these different ways I talk, right? I mean, maybe contribution in the community, doing some home experiments, taking up some learnings through so courses in platforms like Udemy, taking up some learnings through that. All of that can be a different a differentiator for you. Okay, I think I will probably take the questions now. Okay, I see there's a good number of questions. Okay, do these opportunities need to be okay? I think the question talks like, should I be technically sound for these opportunities, or are there non-tech roles also? Yes, there are non-tech roles, but compared to the number of tech roles, right, the non-tech roles are quite lesser. Like, for instance, we have project management roles in cyber, where you need to again have some cyber understanding, but your idea is probably managing massive cyber projects, right? Penetration testing, monitoring, etc. But if it's a domain switch, you already have an experience in project management and you want to switch to cyber, maybe easy. But for freshers, it is difficult to get into non-tech roles. Primarily because the number of roles are lesser and it is not difficult for us to get people from the market. For most of these non-tech roles, we, at least internally, what we are trying is we try to repurpose people, right? So your best fit would be to build those technical skills. And again, I have seen people with complete non-tech background building these skills. So if you are persistent, I'm confident that you can build it, right? I have people from, like with like their graduation on English and graduation on finance, complete non-tech areas, doing technical stuff with me. Okay. Yeah, NFT. There's one question on NFT. I probably won't go into details. NFT basically is a form of tokenization. You can think of it kind of like a cryptocurrency, but not a cryptocurrency. Again, you can read more on NFTs on Ethereum website. Again, it's an upcoming area. It's a very trending area. How to prepare for CISP? CISP is basically, if you are a person who don't have cyber experience, at least I wouldn't recommend you to go and try for CISP, because CISP is meant for seasoned cyber professionals, right? I mean, if you ask me, can't I crack it without cyber experience? Probably yes. Again, you need to read the requirements for CISP. But what CISP helps is, right, CISP helps you to get a very broad understanding, very well-rounded understanding about cyber, different domains like software security, physical security. So typically cracking CISP will help you to work on, strategic roles, working on internal, maybe inside product security, you can work, maybe as a, maybe a cybersecurity lead, basically all those certifications like CISP, CISM. There are a lot of, related certifications. All of them are meant to have a very solid, broader cyber understanding. So typically it's meant for experienced professionals, but the preparation, I think there are already enough materials out there on the official website. In this, they have a this one, right? They have a kind of an outline of what are the areas you have to learn. But generally, my suggestion would be to get some cyber experience and then go for CISP, because then CISP will be far more easier for you. Upwards trend wouldn't be a break even for opportunities in the future areas as these. Yes, there will be a break if attackers stop, or if basically it's a catch. It's like police and crime, right? Do you see any time that we stop or even law enforcement, right? So as long as crime exists, we need law enforcement. As long as cyber crime exists, cyber attacks exist, cyber security is also required. But definitely the hype that is currently in the market, it could subside, because that's what happens, right? Every time there is a bubble in the market, a lot of people enter in the market with skills, and slowly things get normalized. So now we are in a peak of demand. The demands can fall, right? But again, cyber is not going anywhere until attackers go away. And I don't think cyber attacks are not going to die down anytime soon, right? At least for the near term, maybe next 5 years or so. There will be a lot of evolution happening in this field. A lot of what we are doing currently in cyber will go obsolete, but cyber as a domain will stand as long as attackers are also there. So it's almost like law enforcement and crime. Opportunities, where can I get the courses? I talked about some of the different learning sources, but again, I don't endorse any courses. Point is, none of the courses will enable you for cybersecurity. And again, it's our Indian mentality. We expect everything to be taught, right? And again, that's a culture, right? I mean, in school we had a curriculum. In college we had a curriculum. So in cyber, it's very difficult to get a curriculum, and it's a personal journey also, because it's a very broad area. I myself have exposure to probably limited areas in cyber, which is a very broad area. Even after working for close to 6+ years in cyber. So the point is, that is an individualized journey. I don't endorse any course, but certain courses can help you. Like, for example, there are good courses in Udemy. Ideally, you should look at the review of the course and all. General rule of thumb is, if something involves money, think twice. Right? If you have to pay some money, think twice, because there are enough resources available using which you can learn maybe a little slower, but you'll get the same information. Requirements, I think I covered. Basically, any bachelor degree, but it helps to have a related domain, like maybe engineering and computer science, software engineering will help. But again, that's not a rule of thumb. If you are interested, you have some of these extra things that I've talked about. Even if you are from a completely different domain, you can make entry into cyber. Restructure duration. I don't understand that. I don't understand that question. So the person asked can rephrase that question. The question is, please mention the fee structure and duration. I don't understand that. If relevant, what is the KSI in blockchain technology? I think it's a relevance of security in blockchain technology. Yes, it is very relevant. Security is very relevant in blockchain. There is a lot of attacks happening, and blockchain, the problem is most of the use cases in blockchain involves money, and or at least currently a lot of blockchain use cases are financial. So if there is an attack, typically there is a financial impact, and the impact is in millions and billions. Because if a cryptocurrency exchange like CoinDesk or Binance, if they are compromised, right, what will happen is all of the users affected in one exchange, all of their money will go, and the losses will be in millions and billions of dollars. So there is a lot of focus around security in blockchain technology, and that's also one of the areas where I also focus. And I have delivered this service for close to 2-3 customers in the last year itself. So here and also it's an interesting area for bug bounty. I think the highest amount of bounties are offered in the blockchain, and recently one person got almost $1 million of bounty. I think that was the highest one, if I remember correctly. So, in blockchain technology, the bounties, especially when there is a bug bounty, because the financial impact is so huge. Think about it, right? In the physical world, maximum you can do is, you can go and rob a bank. You can go and how much money you can take from a physical bank, right? Whereas, in the crypto world, you can rob something like, let's say something equivalent to HDFC, you can rob the whole bank, not just a single branch, right?
Come on, let's go.
What are the upcoming and well-known companies?
Is that a problem?
Guys, please mute. Okay. Which are the upcoming and well-known companies related with cyber? Again, I touched upon some of the organizations, right? So I don't want to endorse anybody specific, but you can just quickly search, right? Again, those categories, in those categories, a lot of companies are hiring. About placement, again, differentiate yourself. That is the key. If you differentiate yourself, your chances of getting your first cyber job is easier, because typically everybody is interested to join, but the question is, what are you doing about it, right? If you individually take some efforts, like start practicing in Hack the Box, even your Hack the Box profile can be a valid credential. If you show that I have solved 10 machines in Hack the Box, that itself will differentiate you from 70% of the people who want to get into cyber at the entry level. Which are the sites to study cybersecurity? Okay, sites in general, there are a lot of different blogs actually. I mean, these are typically done, typically maintained by individuals. But there are also interesting YouTube channels. But generally, I would recommend, for example, if you are into penetration testing, one of the effective ways is go to Hack the Box or try Hack Me. Those are some of the platforms where you can learn, and you can also read associated write-ups to those challenges there. That is one good way to learn. Generally, there are a lot of sites. It's not easy to. It's ITGC control. Yes, ITGC has some connect with cyber. It is primarily in the ISMS world, the information security management. Right? That is where ITGC is coming into. ITGC and all sorts of paper-based assessments, right? Where you basically it's more like an audit assessment, like you evaluate a company or an organization against a set of controls. Like, for example, do you have an information security policy? What is the protocol to be followed in the case of a cyber incident? So ITGC is kind of related. So if you have an ITGC background, getting to cyber is easier, I would say. Security Plus, I'm not a big fan because it's a theoretical certification. CCNA, I think it's very valuable because I myself, when I was starting off, I've taken CCNA, and that has not helped me make me more employable, but I got a very solid understanding of networks, right? And during my initial years, I also worked as a network administrator, with all this information and knowledge I got from CCNA. So CCNA, I'll vouch for if you want to learn about networks. It's a fantastic course. Again, people can cheat. There's a way for cheat, but that curriculum is fantastic. I'll personally vouch for CCNA. Security Plus or CEH, all of those are basically theoretical certifications. All of them, and even certifications like CCNA, typically there is an opportunity for people to cheat, and these are not looked quite seriously, right? Practical certifications are looked more seriously because of the nature of people. But out of these two, CCNA is something I'll personally watch for because it has helped me immensely in learning about networks. Nothing from a cyber perspective, but learning from a network perspective. They also have CCNA security, which I don't have experience about, but it would be talking about how to secure Cisco devices mostly. Cybersecurity courses are given. I can't vouch for any courses, but some of these certifications are good. Out of these certifications, SANS is very expensive. You cannot even think about SANS, but the rest of them, offensive security will cost you close to almost $1 lakh. But again, if you're not prepared enough, your chances of passing this is very low. So again, this is meant for people with some, all of these are, I would say, are meant for people with some experience. But definitely courses are not going to help too much. There's a lot of, there's a limitation to which, to an extent that we can do handholding. How to get an internship after completing a course? You need to search around. I cannot advise on specific firms, but best bet for you is to go around and create a good profile in LinkedIn and follow the people working on the cybersecurity firm. And there are two ways. Sometimes, people post out opportunities, or you can also proactively reach out, right? I mean, typically people are nice. You can go around and ask if there is an internship opportunity. Worse, they'll tell you that there is not an opportunity, but there is no harm in doing that. Yep, and ICT Academy is providing an internship. So that's another opportunity. So overall, right? I mean, ICT Academy is doing a fantastic job in this area. I should, because I'm partnering with them for quite some time, and in fact, when I was learning, there was no such opportunity, and it's a good opportunity that all of you can capitalize. Again, next question I touched upon. You don't need to have experience in software, because cyber coding skills are helpful but not mandatory. With diploma, you may be able to get into some firms, but some firms may not take you if they have a criteria like they can only hire graduates. Beginner into SOC. Maybe learning a little bit into specific products can help, like Splunk or ArcSight, understanding specific products, and probably even playing around with open source SIEM solution, right? There are also open source SIEM. They are not used widely, but again, you get the conceptual understanding. And some of the solution that is mostly used in market is ArcSight, Splunk, Microsoft Sentinel. These are some of the solutions, SIEM, EDR, Carbon Black. There are a lot of solutions. Getting some understanding in some of these solutions can help you land into a SOC, especially if you're an entry-level person. Blockchain technology. Blockchain has a lot of future. Blockchain has a lot of future. It's currently in a hype. Everybody's trying to get a piece of blockchain into their solutions, but that hype might subside. But blockchain has a lot of potential. In fact, in financial sector, right, every major bank is thinking about implementing some or the other blockchain use cases, even in insurance, and even on the government level, right? Reserve Bank has been giving some hints that at least they are moving towards digital currency, which may not be same as cryptocurrency, but definitely blockchain has a lot of potential, because think about it, right? You can think about it like playing football without a referee, right? The game itself is so fair that you can't cheat. That is the whole point of blockchain. Cheating in a blockchain is very difficult, but it comes with a whole set of other problems. But one thing it does good is without a middleman, it can solve a lot of problems. For example, it can do fair auctions, right? We can do fair auctions, or one of the use cases maybe I can think about is see in our conventional real estate, right? There is a lot of influence for middlemen. We call these people as brokers or middlemen. They have a lot of influence in in influencing the price, right? So instead, if there's a blockchain powered platform for managing real estate, the prices will be far more transparent and fair. So there are a lot of use cases in finance, supply chain, even in government, right? If a lot of use cases in government areas are converted to blockchain, there will be a lot of transparency, a lot of fairness. So from that perspective, blockchain has immense potential. pursuing CH along with trying to try Hackney. CH has a practical version these days. Again, my previous, my experience with CH was when I started on, and at that point, CH was quite lagging behind compared to some of these other certifications. But now they are trying to catch up with CH practical. So CH practical can be a good option if you want to compare between CH non-practical and the practical one. But generally, if you're a fresher, having a certification helps, but the skills is what that matters. You should definitely acquire the skills, and for that, definitely try Hackney is a good platform. What you should focus on is, because again, after a point, right, nobody will bother too much about your certifications. The skill is what that matters. Data science has a lot of potential, but yeah, even in cyber, we are doing some use cases of data science. Because analytics, right? If we do some vulnerability analytics, you can maybe there's this project called OWASP Top 10, where we talk about what are the top 10 vulnerabilities we are seeing in the market, and the whole process is through data science. Actually, we analyze a lot of vulnerabilities, and then we come up with a top 10 list of vulnerabilities. Right, so data science has a lot of possibilities in cyber, but again, it's a very niche area. We are working on some of the aspects internally, but again, finding a job opportunity directly can be a little challenging. Okay, I think we've covered all the questions. How to do research in cybernetics?
Thank you, Danit. Now we'll hand over the session to register.
Was there another session?
Yes, just a briefing about the course.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So, students, if you have any more questions, do mail us, and we can have a last time. So, due to some limitation of the time, so we will hand over the session to Reggie Das, the Head of Knowledge Officer, ICT Academy of Kerala. Over to you, Register.
Hey, am I audible, Nidish?
Yes, a little bit increase the volume.
Can you unmute my other ID? As I have a voice issue with my laptop.
Yes, I will do it.
All right. Thank you, Danit, for the wonderful explanation. You covered all the aspects, starting from the trends, the opportunity, and even the content that student has to focus to learn. And here there's an opportunity with the government of Kerala is providing a scholarship-based scheme for learning cybersecurity. So like you mentioned, it's all about passion. Even if a person with a passion don't need anything, and the web is a place where they can go and learn. But if somebody wants to learn in a very structured way, and it's a journey, so in a journey we have to change our gears from the first gear to the second gear to the third gear, and finally to the top gear. Sometimes some of us needs the initial gears to be shifted in a very systematic way. So in that case, the government of Kerala is providing a wonderful opportunity to learn cybersecurity foundations with the help of ICT Academy. And the ICT Academy course content is prepared with your team, Danit, and thank you so much for the contribution from your end. And we have a structured curriculum. Like some of you, so you mentioned all the three aspects. Like if you wanted to learn something, first of all, you should have the knowledge. And then once you have the knowledge, you should have the capability to apply the knowledge. So that skill that matters. And finally, if you wanted to show someone that you have the skill, definitely you should try to solve real life problems. So internship will definitely help. The current course with ICT Academy has got all the three components. Like it has got curriculum prepared with the support of an industry. And then it is designed with a 70-30 split, like it is mainly focused on hands-on content. So 70%, more than 75% of practical component in the course, with a lot of case studies, projects, everything, capstone project embedded into the course. And finally, an internship with TCS Ion, that is what is possible with this particular course. So it's a 6-month certification program with instructor-led learning in a virtual way.
I think Reggie having some technical issues, so I will finish it off. So as mentioned, it is a part of a government project. So you people may aware that actually there is a project called KKM, Kerala Knowledge Economy Mission. So under the KKM, there is a collaboration tool is there that is called actually DW, Digital Workforce Management System. You people are already registered with the DWMS collaboration tool or actually placement tools. That's why you got an invitation from ICT Academy as well as KKM for this actually industrial trend webinar. I saw a lot of questions over there. The thing is, we will do actually such a technology webinar and every week on different technologies. This is our 4th webinar. Right, some of the people asked about data science and blockchain. So those webinars are going to follow in the coming weeks. So you will get a notification regarding this webinar. So you frequently check on your inboxes and other things. So I'm taking a couple of minutes to brief what is the Kerala Knowledge Economy Mission project is. So most of you joined today also not very clear idea actually how many openings are there in the cybersecurity domain, which are the companies are actually taking the paper. Such questions actually I saw. So all the answers for these questions are available in the collaboration tool called actually DWMS, because actually if you take a report on the last 6 months, nearly 456 openings are actually posted in a cybersecurity domain in this platform. Okay, around that nearly only 60% of the vacancies are filled. 40% of the vacancies are still open. So I'm first time requesting all the participants, once after completing the webinar, to please log in using your credentials to the DWMS website and actually check the openings based on your skills. You are requested to apply for the openings, because as rightly mentioned by Danny, there is a lot of openings are there, but actually they're finding it very difficult to get a right set of candidates. So this specific initiative, the government of Kerala initiative, is bringing the companies as well as the job seekers in a single platform and actually connect with them to ensuring the candidates as well as actually the corporates are actually service fairly. So that is a fundamental idea behind this specific initiative. I actually, instead of I'm saying more about this project actually, so I will take, or actually I will run a clip of actually the person who is actually a brain behind this initiative, Dr. K.M. Abraham sir. He is actually executive vice chairman of KDISC. You people may aware of what is KDISC. KDISC is a Kerala Development Innovation Strategic Council. Under that only the Kerala Knowledge Economy Mission comes. He is also served as the Chief Principal Secretary to the Honorable Chief Minister of Kerala. So he actually briefing about the project. So it may be having more authorization and actually more realistic word from the government itself, actually why the government is actually starting such initiative. Nidish, can you run that video? Nidish, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I'll.
Yeah,
Now-
please. Yeah, please.
നോളജ് എക്കോണമി മിഷൻ, അതായത് KDSCEDനെ ഏൽപ്പിച്ചിരിക്കുന്ന ഏറ്റവും വലിയ ബൃഹത്തായ ഒരു പദ്ധതി. ആ ഒരു പദ്ധതിയുടെ ഉദ്ദേശ ലക്ഷ്യം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ തന്നെ നമ്മുടെ യുവതലമുറ അവരെ ലക്ഷ്യം വെച്ചിട്ടുള്ളതാണ്. അപ്പോൾ കേരളം എന്നും ഒരു നെറ്റ് എക്സ്പോർട്ടർ ഓഫ് ഹ്യൂമൻ റിസോഴ്സാണ്. നമ്മൾ പുറത്തോട്ട് അയക്കുന്ന വ്യക്തികളുടെ എണ്ണം അല്ലെങ്കിൽ തൊഴിൽ തേടിപ്പോകുന്നവരുടെ എണ്ണം നമ്മൾക്കകത്ത് നമ്പറിനെക്കാട്ടിലും കൂടുതലാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ ഒരു കാര്യം നിലനിർത്തണം എന്നുള്ളത് വളരെ പ്രധാനമായിട്ടുള്ള കാര്യമാണ്. വി ഹാവ് ടു കണ്ടിന്യൂ ടു ബി ദ ബെസ്റ്റ് ഇൻ ഹ്യൂമൻ റിസോഴ്സസ്. അതാണ് നമ്മുടെ ഒരു ലക്ഷ്യം. അപ്പോൾ ഈ ഹ്യൂമൻ റിസോഴ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് സർക്കാരിൽ ഒരാണ്ടിൽ 20,000 മുതൽ 30,000 പുതിയ ജോലികൾ വരും. സർക്കാർ ഈ പബ്ലിക് സെക്ടർ കമ്പനിയും കൂടെ എടുക്കുവാണെങ്കിൽ ഒരു 2,000-3,000 വരും. അതിനകത്ത് ഇത് വരുന്നത് പുതിയതല്ലെന്ന് ഓർക്കണം, ഈ റിട്ടയർമെൻറ്റ് വേക്കൻസികൾ നിറയ്ക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ബാക്കിയുള്ള ജോലികൾ ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ട് എന്നുള്ളൊരു കോൺഫിഡൻസ് നമ്മുടെ യുവതലമുറയ്ക്ക് കൊടുക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ് ഈ പ്രോഗ്രാമിൻ്റെ ഏറ്റവും വലിയൊരു ലക്ഷ്യം. അപ്പോൾ ഇപ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് ഈ ഒരു പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൻ്റെ വ്യത്യാസം കൃത്യമായിട്ട് ഞാൻ പറയുകയാണെങ്കിൽ, അതൊരു എംപ്ലോയ്മെൻറ്റ് എക്സ്ചേഞ്ച് അല്ല, അതൊരു സ്കില്ലിംഗ് പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം അല്ല, അതൊരു മിയർ ഗവൺമെൻറ് പ്രോഗ്രാമിൻ്റെ ഭാഗമായിട്ട് ഒരു അവസരം കൊടുക്കുന്നത് മാത്രമല്ല, ഇതൊരു വളരെ കോംപ്ലക്സ് എക്കോസിസ്റ്റം നമ്മൾ ഇതിൽ കൂടുതൽ വാർത്തെടുക്കുകയാണ്. ഒരു സൈഡിൽ ഒരു എംപ്ലോയ്മെൻറ്റ് മാർക്കറ്റ് പ്ലേസ് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്യും. അവിടെ നമ്മൾ എംപ്ലോയേഴ്സിനെയും നമ്മുടെ കുട്ടികളെയും നമ്മുടെ എംപ്ലോയീസിനെയും കൂടെ ഒരുമിച്ച് കൊണ്ടുവന്ന് മാച്ച് ചെയ്യാൻ നോക്കുന്ന ഒരു വലിയ സംരംഭം. രണ്ടാമത്തതിൽ ഈ ഗ്യാപ്പ് എന്തുവാണ് നമ്മൾ കണ്ടുപിടിക്കുന്നത്. വേറെ ആരും അങ്ങനെ ചെയ്യാറില്ല. ഈ ഗ്യാപ്പ് കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചിട്ട് ഈ ഗ്യാപ്പ് നികത്തുവാനായിട്ട് നമ്മുടെ കുട്ടികൾക്ക് അവസരം കൊടുക്കുന്നു. ഉദാഹരണം, ഒരു ജാവ പ്രോഗ്രാമിങ്ങിന് പോയി, പക്ഷേ എംപ്ലോയർ പറയുന്നു ശരിയല്ല, ഞങ്ങൾ ഇയാളുടെ CV പരിശോധിച്ചു, ഇയാളുമായിട്ട് ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂ നടത്തി, പക്ഷേ ഈ വ്യക്തിയിൽ സബ്ജക്റ്റ് നോളജ് പോരാ. അപ്പം നമ്മളെന്ത് ചോദിക്കുന്നു, ജാവ പ്രോഗ്രാമിങ്ങിൻ്റെ ഒരു കോഴ്സിൽ നിങ്ങൾ വരാൻ തയ്യാറാണോ എന്ന് നമ്മൾ ചോദിക്കുകയും ആ കോഴ്സിന് പഠിപ്പിക്കാനായിട്ടുള്ള അവസരം നമ്മൾ ഒരുക്കി കൊടുക്കുകയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഈ മുമ്പോട്ട് ഈ ഒരു ജോബ് മാച്ചിങ് എംപ്ലോയിയെയും കൊണ്ടുവരുമ്പം ഇതിനോടൊപ്പം തന്നെ സ്കിൽ ഡെഫിഷ്യൻസി കാലിബ്രേറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് അത് നികത്തി കൊടുക്കുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. ഇനി ഇവർ എംപ്ലോയ്മെൻറ്റിന് പോയി എന്നിരിക്കട്ടെ, നമ്മൾ എംപ്ലോയറിനോട് പറയുന്നത് നിങ്ങൾ റിസ്ക് എടുക്കണ്ട, നിങ്ങൾ ധൈര്യമായിട്ട് മുന്നോട്ട് വരും. നിങ്ങളൊരു കാൻഡിഡേറ്റിൻ്റെ ഡെഫിഷ്യൻസി ജോലി സ്ഥലത്ത് വെച്ച് കണ്ടു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഞങ്ങളോട് പറഞ്ഞാൽ മതി, ഞങ്ങൾ ഈ വ്യക്തിയെ തിരിച്ചെടുത്ത് ഇവർക്ക് സോഷ്യൽ സേഫ്റ്റി നെറ്റിൽ കൂടെ നമ്മളൊരു സപ്പോർട്ട് സിസ്റ്റം കൊടുക്കുകയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ സപ്പോർട്ട് സിസ്റ്റം എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഇപ്പോൾ 6 മാസം അടുത്ത കോഴ്സ് തീർക്കാൻ 6 മാസം എടുക്കുക, കാലതാമസം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ആ 6 മാസം ട്രെയിൻ ചെയ്യണം. 6 മാസം ട്രെയിൻ ചെയ്യണം. 6 മാസം ട്രെയിൻ ചെയ്യുമ്പം ഈ വ്യക്തിക്ക് ചിലവ് കഴിയണമല്ലോ, അതിനൊരു സോഷ്യൽ സേഫ്റ്റി നെറ്റും കൂടെ ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഒരു മൾട്ടി ലെയർഡാണ്. ഒരു സൈഡിൽ വളരെ വലിയൊരു മാച്ചിങ് പ്രോഗ്രാം നടന്നുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നു, വേറൊരു സൈഡിൽ ഈക്വലൻ്റായിട്ട് ഒരു സ്കിൽ പ്രൊവിഷൻ പ്രോഗ്രാം നടന്നു. ഓരോന്നിനും അതിൻ്റേതായിട്ടുള്ള വ്യത്യസ്തമായിട്ടുള്ള ഇതുണ്ട്, ഫീച്ചേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ട്. ഉദാഹരണം പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഈ മാച്ചിങ് ലെവൽ തന്നെ എടുക്കുക. വെറുതെ നമ്മൾ എംപ്ലോയേഴ്സ് ഫാക്ടറീസ് രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്യുക, മാച്ച് ചെയ്യുക അല്ല. ഇത് നമ്മൾ ഇൻ്റർനാഷണൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള അഗ്രിഗേറ്റേഴ്സുമായിട്ടും ബന്ധപ്പെടും. മനസ്സിലായില്ലേ? ഒരു തട്ടിൽ അത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മുടെ ലോക്കൽ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രിയുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെടും. അപ്പം എനിക്ക് വിദ്യാർത്ഥികളോട്, യുവതലമുറയോട് പറയാനായിട്ടുള്ളൊരു ആഹ്വാനം എന്ന് വേണേൽ അതിനെ വിശേഷിപ്പിക്കാം. ഈ പ്രോഗ്രാമിൽ വരുന്ന ഇതിൻ്റെ അവസരങ്ങൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കാം. ഈ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിലേക്ക് ഈ വിദ്യാർത്ഥിനി സുഹൃത്തുക്കളും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ യുവതലമുറയും കൂടെ വന്ന് തൊഴിൽ അന്വേഷിക്കുന്നവർ അതിനകത്ത് ജോയിൻ ചെയ്യുമ്പം അവർക്ക് ഒരു ക്ഷമയോടുകൂടി ഈ ഒരു സ്കിൽ പ്രോഗ്രാമിൻ്റെ ബെനിഫിറ്റ്സ് അത് സ്വീകരിക്കാനായിട്ട് വരണം. നമ്മുടെ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൽ വരുന്ന എംപ്ലോയേഴ്സ് അവർക്കറിയാമല്ലോ, അവർ എക്സ്പോസ്ഡ് ആണെന്ന് അറിയാമല്ലോ, അവർ ഇത്രയും കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഓഫർ ചെയ്യുന്നു. ഈ ഓഫർ അനുസരിച്ച് ഒരു പബ്ലിക് പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം, സർക്കാർ ഓടിക്കുന്ന ഒരു പബ്ലിക് പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൽ അവർ ഒന്ന് രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്യുന്നു. അവർക്ക് ഇത്തരത്തിലുള്ള ജോലി ഉണ്ടെന്ന് പറയുന്നു. അവർ ഈ ജോലിയിൽ മിനിമം ഇത്രയും കാര്യങ്ങൾ കൊടുക്കുമെന്ന് അവർ ആദ്യം തന്നെ പറയുന്നു. ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂവിന് നമ്മുടെ കുട്ടികൾ പോകുന്നു, അവർക്ക് സെലക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നു. അപ്പം ഒരു ശകലം ഒരു പേരൻറ്റിങ്ങും കൂടെ ഈ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൻ്റെ ഒരു ഫംഗ്ഷനാണ്.
Yeah, thank you, Nidish. So basically, it actually focusing on 2 areas, as actually rightly sir mentioned. It is, we are not saying it is the only opportunity for the people to get into the job, but actually it is the one of the best opportunity for actually a proper guidance and other support, because here actually you may not be cheated because it is driven by the government entities and actually supported by the leading the corporates. So we are giving some parent guidance and support for the people who would like to actually start their career. As part of this project, actually, government is planning to provide actually direct and indirect placement to actually nearly 20 lakhs people in coming 5 years. I think that before the year of 26, actually, they're planning to. It's not actually opportunities, actually providing the placement. It may be a direct placement, or actually it may be a freelancing placement. So that is actually an ambitious project a government has. As it is mentioned, if you having a skills, actually I'm requesting you to immediately apply based on your skills in the DWMS website, because still actually thousands plus openings are available on the different domains based on your skills. If you are applying this immediately, you can actually start your interview process and other things. If you're finding out actually you attended already a couple of interviews, and actually as mentioned, you need actually some additional skills to actually crack the interview or actually start the career. There also the government is giving a handhold for you to providing a skill program. The skill program ICT Academy is offering for only IT and ITS segment. We are not offering for any other segment, only IT and ITS segment with a scholarship also, because it is having up to 100% scholarship for the deserved candidates. So again, once I am saying actually this is one of the great opportunity for your lifetime available, so you please use it, but it is not a only opportunity, because you have multiple opportunity. You can take based on your actually the fair knowledge and consideration, but we strongly recommend this may actually help you to handhold you and actually make your journeys more comfortable within a short period to start your career. So on that note, we are actually concluding this webinar. As some of you people asked about actually whether we will get the recorded content of this webinar or not, I hope actually all the participants, you will get a mail communication from our team with the recorded content of this specific webinar. You can actually, whenever you are you couldn't able to attend completely, or if you have facing any technical issues in between this, based on your available time, you can actually go through the technical part, which is actually very briefly given by our industry speakers today. Once again, I'm thanking all the participants for your passion listening. And as we mentioned, we are actually winding up the webinar with
Srinivas, can I add my endorsement?
Yes, please.
I might, yeah.
Yes.
So because again, I've been part of this process, right? And in my understanding, within the industry, there is this whole opportunity is very unique, right? It's multilateral, as pointed out, and in fact, I am not aware of any other opportunity where a lot of these different elements, right? And if you see this, this is not a course that is kind of like set up in a week's period or so. There's a lot of thought process, a lot of brain power has gone into designing this curriculum, right? And again, I and some of my team members, some of our experts with us, were part of this program. And I understand even similarly, even people from other leading firms were part of, designing the curriculum and, creating this, basically this whole opportunity. It's multilateral, not just learning. You basically, and also these trainers of ICT Academy, they have worked quite well with industry experts, and they understand. So basically, one of the major gaps what we see from industry is the requirements in industry and our academy are basically in two different domains. So whatever that is taught in colleges, we need a slightly different version of that when it comes to industry, and that is exactly what ICT Academy has managed to solve. And that's actually through collaboration, right? Collaboration with the industry, understanding what is required for the industry, and in fact, they are truly connecting the three parts, right? The skills, the employees, and employers. So by that, creating basically solving the demand and supply problem within all of these domains. So to an extent, I can personally endorse this because I have been part of setting up the curriculum, and one thing I can vouch is the curriculum is very current, right? And it would be one of the, I generally, you might have already sensed it. I generally don't vouch courses because you attend a course, then you naturally think that at the end of the course, you get the right skills. But, ICT Academy this course is probably the closest to you can get, because it has all the elements. It has theoretical, practical, and also it is well connected and designed based on the industry requirements. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Now the floor is open for the first Q&A session. If you have any queries regarding the course structure, everything, we'll make you clear about. Anybody got any doubt? Yes, is DWMS and AI-based hiring interview. So over to you, Srikumar sir.
Yeah. DWMS based on it is actually not completely AI based hiring interface. Actually, it actually is matching based on the skills what you are updating. So whenever actually the employer actually in the JD putting some type of skills, and actually you also actually the same skills means it will get matched, and actually that pop-up message will come to you. Actually, this opening is available. Please apply for that. So in that way, it is working. It is not actually completely AI based as of now. But actually, based on your skill set, it will match the openings, and it will give you a communication. You will get a mail communication. Also, actually, whenever you are logging in your homepage itself, actually the openings will pop up. So that way, it is easy for you to apply. Otherwise, also, if you actually checking for any specific skills, if you are having a Java skill, then you are checking any openings on the Java skill means it will actually show all the openings which is available on the Java based on your actually interest and other things. You can apply for it. Once it is applied, then it is immediately the notification go to the companies. Then they will schedule all the interview and all other coming process, and they will take it from there. So we are recommending skilled people can utilize the DWMS platform more effectively to start their career. If you think actually you need some additional support, or actually you need to upskill on specific technology, means you can actually take up the scholarship based program which is offered as part of the KKN project. I hope actually almost all the queries are addressed directly. So,
for more queries, you can contact us with the number given in the chat. So we will be available at waiting for your queries. Anything to add, Register? Due to some technical error, the Register couldn't able to continue. So, Register, would you like to add something?
No, Nitish, I think everything is discussed, so it's fine.
Okay. Now I welcome Anu Jacob, the project coordinator of ICT Academy, for the word of thanks.
Okay. Am I audible, Nitish?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. First of all, thank you all for joining this wonderful section. First of all, I would thank Mr. Thanit for a precious time with ICT Academy of Kerala for this webinar of cybersecurity. And thanks for taking this webinar. It's a valuable and more informative sessions for all the participants. Thank you so much for your wonderful session, Thanit. And next, I would like to thank our ICT Academy team, Srikumar sir, Riji sir, and Nitish, Aishwarya. All thank you for joining. And last but not least, I thank all the participants who have joined and attended the session, and happy to see such a big number. And thank you all participants for your time and participation throughout the session. And thank you all for joining this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Anu. So if you want to know more about the course details, you can contact the number given in the chat. Thank you.